Hey guys, so this week we are going to have lesson 4 of our study of SR4 titled Satan's World System. So this week in particular, we're going to be talking about the vanity of life, on the total futility of life in the material world, as contrasted with the spiritual. So here are the things that we are going to be discussing today. First, we're going to start by talking about the Genesis curse, so the idea of thorns and thistles in this life and then death, back to the dust from whence we came. Then we're going to talk about how achievement is not really within the power of man to control. So everything we do in life happens to us essentially outside of our conscious control. And then we're going to talk about how even if you do happen to gain something, well, nothing in this life is at all secure. So all you have can be lost in the blink of an eye. After that, we're going to talk about how the eternal rewards we have as Christians are actually completely secure as opposed to anything we might acquire in this life. And the third point in this progression that we're going through is that even if you do manage to gain something, and even if you manage to hold on to it, well, death will still make a mockery of you, for no man can avoid death. After going through this progression here, discussing the futility of life, we're also just going to make the point more briefly that for anyone who's being honest, we don't even have to be as rigorous as all this, for life is self-evidently pointless. After discussing all of this, we are going to close by talking about how, given that all these things are true, true meaning for us must come external to this physical world. So by way of introduction, we are going to discuss the Genesis curse as described in Genesis chapter 3, verses 16 through 19. So after Adam and Eve fell, God declared to the woman that she would have pain in childbirth. And to Adam, he said that the ground will be cursed. And so we must eat our bread by the breaking of our back in toil. And then for all humanity, after a short existence here, we will return to dust because we were made from dust, and to dust we shall return. So picking up in verse 19, right? So we will eat this bread of toil until we die, and we return to the dust from which we were made. So this is our estate as humans, as we've spent the last couple times talking about, right? After Adam and Eve's fall, this is the state they found themselves in outside the Garden of Eden. And this is also our present spiritual state in the world. So with regards to this curse that God has laid upon man in Genesis chapter 3 here, this curse will only be removed when God has brought history itself to an end, as mentioned here in Revelation chapter 22. So in the meantime, the cycle of birth, thistles and thorns, and then a return to the ground from whence we were originally taken is destined to repeat for all of us. And this is true for all people who have lived and all of us who will live in the future to come. And because of this, because we live a difficult, short life followed by death, we can say that everything is futility. Utter futility, says the teacher. Everything is futility. You may also hear this translated as vanity. It's the same general idea that given these realities to our present existence, everything in life is vanity or futility. One of the primary ways by which life deprives us of any true meaning is that even though many people strive for things, they can't necessarily control the outcome of their striving. So even with prodigious effort, achievement is not really within the power of man to control. So we have this verse from Ecclesiastes chapter 9 here. It says Ecclesiastes 9:11. The race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise or wealth to the brilliant or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to them all. So who can control what happens to them? Though a man may toil and strive all the days of his life, he may still watch the desires of his heart go to another. So given this, what then was his effort, all that he strived for? So for us as humans, even if you work the hardest, you sacrifice the most, you put in the most time and energy, you aren't guaranteed to come out victorious because, as this verse in Ecclesiastes says, time and chance happen to them all. So as in warfare, where timing can be everything and luck can determine the fate of nations, well, the same thing is true for us on an individual level in our lives. And this point right here is the first reason why everything in the world is corrupted by futility and vanity. Because All of these things are completely outside of our control as humans. And so no matter what we may wish, no matter how hard we may work, we can't control even the smallest thing. Well, you might say, some people still manage to achieve things. So they put in their hard work, they pay their dues, and then life gives them good things. Well, even if you do happen to gain something, nothing in this life is at all secure. Everything you have can be lost in the blink of an eye. So, of those who do achieve what they've set their hopes on, many of them will lose what they have striven for, since everything in this life is ephemeral. So, probably the strongest cross-reference here, this actually gets quoted later on, I believe, in First Peter here. Yes, is this passage in Isaiah chapter 40. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. Isaiah chapter 40, picking up at verse 6. A voice says, "Call out." Then he answered, "What shall I call out?" All flesh is grass, and all its loveliness is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, when the breath of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. So we are grass as humans. We only live for a very short time, and then our lives are snuffed out. And for this reason, it is great arrogance of man to think that we can hold on to the things that we have gained, that we are in control of our possessions, our relationships, and even our life itself. We have this other verse following the one we just quoted on the last slide, Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 12. Moreover, no man knows when his hour will come. As fish are caught in a cruel net, or birds are taken in a snare, so men are trapped by evil times that fall unexpectedly upon them. So just as we cannot control whether all of our effort leads to the success that we wish it to, we also can't control whether or not we lose any of the effects of all of the hard work we've put in this life. And this is the second reason why everything in life is futility and vanity, because not only can we as humans not control whether all of our effort yields any results, we also can't control whether we get to hold on to anything that we've gained. Now, by way of contrast, the eternal rewards that we earn as Christians are completely secure because nothing can happen to them. Unlike in this world where you can lose things, things can be corrupted or degraded, the eternal rewards we have as Christians are completely secure. So we have this verse in Matthew chapter 6, picking up at verse 19. Don't stock up treasures for yourself on the earth, where moth and corrosion eat them away, and where thieves dig through and steal them. But stock up treasures for yourself in heaven, where neither moth nor corrosion eat them away, and where thieves neither dig through nor steal them. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So unlike the people of the world who have no hope, no way to hold on to the things they seek after, for us as Christians, the rewards that we earn in relation to the exercising of our faith in this world are completely sure and certain. So in this progression that we're discussing about the futility of the world and this material life, we should hold as a point of contrast the security we have as Christians in the rewards we work towards in our spiritual growth. So we've already covered how life is futile because we as humans cannot control the outcome of what we strive for, and how even if we gain something, we can't control whether or not we lose it the very next second. Well, even for those small fortunate number who manage to retain what they have striven for all the days of their lives, death will ultimately bereave them of all of their accomplishments. And this is because death, in particular, out of everything in life, death makes a mockery of all human achievement. So we have this verse also from Matthew chapter 16. Now, commonly people will translate this as soul, but actually life makes better sense in context. And so we might translate this verse as, what profit will a man have if he gains the whole world but loses his life? So no matter if you have everything that a man might want, so wealth, power, fame, fortune, family, everything that you think will make you happy, well, if you have all of that, but you still die, of what good is it? You may enjoy it only temporarily, but everything you have will be lost when you go to the grave. So because loss of life is the common heritage of all mankind, like we discussed from that curse in Genesis chapter 3, unless some solution can be found to this overarching problem of our physical mortality, even achievement on a level unsurpassed in human history is essentially meaningless. And you can actually even make the further point that the greater the achievement of man, the greater the futility in death, on account of the correspondingly greater loss involved. So, along with their lives, the poor only lose their poverty. But in death, the rich, successful person loses everything most esteemed in this world. So, death thus renders all secular achievements essentially pointless. Because even if you gain that which you want, even if you manage to hold on to it and life doesn't take it away from you, when you die, you can't take it with you. And this is why, even in the Psalms, we have this sentiment. Psalm chapter 49, verse 16 and 17. Do not be overawed when a man grows rich, when the splendor of his house increases, for he will take nothing with him when he dies. His splendor will not descend with him. So this third point here concludes the main progression of logic that renders everything in the world futility and vanity, because we can't control the outcome of situations that we exert ourselves in. We can't control whether anything we get from our effort is taken away from us or not. And even if we manage to have the very best life possible, it's only temporary, for we take nothing with us when we die. Now, continuing on this topic of how we take nothing with us, nothing we do in life is truly original, says Ecclesiastes. Nothing we do will truly be remembered. So despite all of our efforts, death will snatch away from us everything we gained, even though through our arrogance we named lands after ourselves. That's quoting Psalm chapter 49. And moreover, once we've died, we will be oblivious to the fate of our prized possessions. So even if they go to people who are unworthy of all the effort we've put in, well, we can't control that, because at that point, we're dead. We have no say in the matter. And so in this way, despite all of the boastful arrogance of man, we are not able to secure a single thing against death, nor can we control the timing of when death comes to claim us. So in this way, nothing in life is truly secure and nothing is forever. And this renders all human effort, all human achievement, essentially pointless. Now, I added this actually isn't in SR4, because I wanted to address an idea that has been common since antiquity, and that's the idea of immortal fame. So if we just acquire enough fame and reputation, our names will live on forever. So this is typified in Homer here. We're quoting the Iliad, chapter 9, where we have the embassy to Achilles. In Iliad, Achilles is said to have this choice put before him. So either he can fight in the war and achieve this glory that will make his name live on, and his renown shall be imperishable, as we see here. Or he can return to his country and die of old age after having achieved relatively little in the world. So his name will not be known by anyone, but he'll have a longer life. So that's the fate of Achilles as he describes it in the people who come to him in embassy. However, so Achilles, operating under the Homeric ethic, the heroic ethic as a Homeric warrior, may think that his glory, his kleos in Greek here, will make him immortal. But truly, does he really live on? So while his body is eaten by worms, memory of him will fade. By the time of his grandchildren, will his actual identity even be known? So this is the problem with the idea of immortality through fame, as it were. It's a poor simulacrum of true immortality, because no matter how great your fame, no matter what people may think of you, true knowledge of you is actually lost. Your personality is gone, your personhood is gone, because you are no longer a person in death. And so what immortality is this that people strive for? Is this what people work so hard to obtain all the days of their life? And this, again, is why we say everything in the world is futility and vanity. Because even this concept, even this notion, which different people in times and places throughout history have taken this sentiment and said, this is how man can make himself immortal. Well, even this doesn't really even pass any sort of close inspection, because at the end of the day, even these people who think that they are going to live on through their fame, they're still dead. They have no way of enjoying this fame or even caring that their name has lived on. And so given these things that we've talked about, this 3-point progression, we've made what I have called here a precise logical accounting of life's ultimate futility. But you don't even have to go this far to convince honest people to see life's true nature, so the true pointlessness of life in the material world. And this is because the vanity of human effort and the ephemeral nature of life is difficult to ignore or deny for anyone who's truly being objective. A good verse that sort of typifies the sentiment here is this one from Psalm chapter 39, verse 6. Man is a mere phantom as he goes to and fro. He bustles about, but only in vain. He heaps up wealth, not knowing who will get it. We have many other verse references here. I kind of skimmed over them when they came up the last time here. Many of these overlap. So this is the sentiment here that the world is ephemeral. Nothing truly lasts. And that is the vanity of life in the material world. So given all of these things, given that we've just outlined how life in the material world is essentially pointless and vain, anytime an atheist tells you that they think life has meaning, you should ask them how they reckon so, because an atheist, if they're a strict materialist, only believes in this present material world. They think this is all there is. And so how can they think that life has meaning in this world where all outcomes in life are completely out of our control as humans, where no one can completely secure even the smallest thing in life, protecting it from loss, theft, degradation, and the like? Even if someone manages to obtain the outcome they want as a result of their effort, it can get wiped away in the blink of an eye. And so even those few who live all their lives with everything the world has to offer, so power, fame, wealth, anything else the human heart desires, well, even these people will take nothing with them to the grave. In a few short years, they will lose all they hold dear. Everything they strived for will pass on to others, even if said others are in no way worthy, and no one will remember their true character. So this is the fate of the world. This is how the world operates. So if an atheist tells you that they think the world has meaning, you should ask them, how can they answer to these questions? How can a life without any sort of eternal spiritual dimension possibly provide meaning? Because all of these things are true and they are incontrovertibly true. There's no way that you can get out of them. And so this is actually an excellent tool in apologetics for having people question their worldviews. It's not ultimately our responsibility to logic people into believing, but one of the best ways that you can get people considering whether or not God exists or whether or not Christianity is plausible is to get them to question what they actually believe themselves. And so if you point out all of the futility in the world, everything that's out of our control as humans, and how things happen to us and we can do nothing about them. And if you point out how, given all this, if people only believe in this material world, if they think this is it, well, then how can they possibly go about being happy and content in life? Because life in this case is so depressing. If there is actually no eternal spiritual dimension behind our existence, then our existence is actually horrifically depressing. And it's made even the more so by the fact that humans continually attempt to convince ourselves. We attempt to convince ourselves of life's great importance. So if there is no eternal spiritual dimension, if this life is all there is, well, then we are constantly trying to delude ourselves into pretending it's important. And that is what they call tragic irony. Because while in truth, if there were no spiritual dimension, we would just be snuffed out like candles in the great void. So here today, gone tomorrow. Well, people would still fancy themselves kings and queens of their own destiny, right? Even as said destiny cuts them down in its decrees. So people would think that this life has all this meaning, when in reality, we are nothing. And nothing we do has any lasting consequence. And so that is the unavoidable fact of life that unbelievers must grapple with if they don't believe in God. That all of these things are true. We can't control a single bit of it, and yet we still die on the other side. And for us as Christians, I want us to close with this. For us as Christians, we are most fortunate that we've been given the opportunity to sidestep all this futility in the world, keeping our eyes instead fixed on the eternal. And this is a really important point to make whenever we talk about the book of Ecclesiastes, written from the perspective essentially of the unbelieving world. This is the pointlessness of life if you don't have God. If we don't work and strive after the eternal things, this is why life is pointless. But for us as Christians, we know that our lives have eternal meaning. Everything we do in service to the body of Christ will get us eternal reward at the judgment seat. So, in a manner of speaking, all we do in life for us as Christians has echoes in eternity. And this is by way of contrast, like we brought up with the eternal rewards that are secure for us as Christians. This is completely in contrast to the way the world works in a strictly material sense. And so for us as Christians, we have this great meaning to our lives. But sometimes we forget that. And if we ever do forget temporarily that these eternal matters are the only ones that truly matter, if we ever temporarily buy into the world's skin-deep veneer, well, let us call back to mind what we've talked about today regarding the true nature of this present material existence. So we've talked about all of the futility here, everything that's outside of our control. And if we are tempted to forget, or if we even do forget, that the only things that matter in life are the eternal, reminding ourselves of these things can be an excellent way to turn us back onto the spiritual path that we should be following. Okay, so to recap the things that we've talked about in the lesson today, we started out talking about the Genesis curse mentioned in Genesis chapter 3, verses 16 through 19. The idea that we will work backbreaking toil for our bread, thorns and thistles, and then we'll return to the dust from which we were created. After that, we opened up the logical progression here of the things that makes life futility and vanity. And the first one that we talked about was how achievement, everything we strive after, is not even really within the power of man to control. So we can't control the outcomes of events no matter how hard we try. Then we talked about how even if you do manage to gain something, well, nothing in this life is at all secure. So everything you have can be lost in the blink of an eye, and there's nothing you can do about it. After this, we contrasted that with the total security of the eternal rewards we work towards as Christians. So everything that we have stored up in heaven does not face this same vulnerability to loss that things in the world do. And after that, we closed in this progression of the points 1, 2, 3. Point 3 was even if we manage to gain something, and even if we manage to hold on to it, even for our whole lives, well, death will still make a mockery of us. For death is the shared heritage of all mankind, and we can take nothing with us. Even if this sentiment of, oh, well, our names will live on after us, well, that only goes so far because you aren't even around to enjoy it. And so that is not true immortality in any sort of real sense. And after this, we pointed out that even though we went to the bother of being all rigorous in this and laying out this logical accounting of life's true futility, well, for anyone who's being honest with themselves, we don't even have to go so far because life is self-evidently pointless. Even if you examine it just for a short amount of time, you'll see that because we control nothing in the world and we're here today and gone tomorrow, if this life is all there is, then it is self-evidently pointless. It is futility and vanity beyond measure. And then we closed with all of this is why true meaning must come external to this physical world. So for us as Christians, we made this argument that we have meaning to our lives because everything we do has eternal consequences, eternal significance. But for unbelievers who don't have that, who think that this world is all there is, they have to grapple with all of the questions that we've raised here, those 3 points we went through about how things in life are out of our control. And so this is why, even for us as Christians, there is no meaning to be found in this world, because the only things that truly matter are eternal ones. And so that's what we talked about today. In coming weeks, we will keep going on this topic of the vanity of life. In fact, this is one of the longest sections in this study of SR4. And we will probably be on this particular topic for at least a few weeks because it's maybe, a 6th and 8th of the study. It's quite long. And so we opened it up today. We've gone through the main progression of the futility and vanity of life. But in coming weeks, we will continue to hit more and more facets of this, looping back to the things we've talked about today in this introduction as to why life in the material world is completely meaningless, full of vanity and futility.